Hello, my name's Emily. I'm an artist and jewellery maker. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm not talking about art or jewellery making. I'm in fact talking about books because I've been on a slight hiatus because I've not been very well, and I have collected a few books because it's been one thing that's been keeping me busy while I've been in bed not being very well. So accumulated a fair few. Before I divulge in the books that I have recently purchased, some of these have been read and really enjoyed, so I wanted to have a physical copy myself. Some of them I haven't read but thought I would pick myself up with a new story. Some I've done research on, some I haven't. But without further ado, let's get started. The bargain of this whole haul, my copy of Madly Deeply, the Alan Rickman Diaries, which I have just finished on Audible, and loved it so much I knew I was going to get a copy of this at some point when I could afford it, and then saw this in a charity shop, asked the person how much it was, and let's just say full price it is £25. I got this for £1.99. Yes, nearly £2. So I love Alan Rickman, he's my favourite actor. I love him with my whole heart. Such an interesting read from someone who is a big fan and knowing of the kind of films that he did, but also learning that of the relationships he had with other fellow actors or even the political world. I found it very interesting to hear how he coped with certain things. Also, people that I never thought he was friends with were actually really close friends with. I was just absolutely fascinated. The narrator on Audible was it captured the essence of how I believe Alan Rickman would have written as his inner monologue while writing this diary. Loved it, and I cannot believe I got this for, I'm trying to work out the percentage off. My partner is a maths teacher. I wish he could tell me right now, but he's at school. It's like £2, like so much percent off. The next book is The Glass House by Eve Chase. Now this book I saw, probably the oldest book that I've had in my pile of recently purchased books. But I'll be honest, I'm a massive lover of any form of glass vessel, specifically mason jars. So this in itself intrigued me in terms of the concept. Then I read the blurb and thought, it's not my usual sort of book, but I'm going to take a risk. It was 50p. I thought I would try it, and the aesthetic, the botanical vibes, I'm intrigued. Another book I recently purchased, well, for the second time, but the first time I read this book, I was in hospital, was on a lot of medications. Do not remember reading this book at all. So I wanted to buy the copy myself and have it for my library because I've recently read the audiobook. Absolutely loved it. I love the film as well, just the whole, it's, if you know, you know, it's very heart-wrenching but beautifully, relatably written, really candid in both perspectives. I'm really interested in seeing more, which we'll talk about in a moment, but very excited to have this as my own copy as well. I said this because it is the sequel to Me Before You. Jojo Moyes also did another book after this, I think, still with Louisa Clark, and I'm very interested to read what happens after, and it is one of the next ones I want on my TBR, so this will be next after another book that I've purchased that I'm currently reading now. This book was purchased when I took my mother to my favourite charity shop, the one that sells the books for 50p, and she saw me looking at this, took it out of my hand and said she was going to buy it me. As an artist, this intrigued me because I myself use sketchbooks, dabbled in and out and rarely finished them, but that's by the by. I feel like it's a bit of a mystery, kind of wanderlust inspired, and it's not normally the kind of books that I would read, but the word sketchbook got me and I will give it a go. I like to kind of step outside my comfort zone with certain books. If they don't appeal to me, I'm not afraid to DNF, but I do persist. I am quite stubborn, but I know when I do DNF, it is not done without thinking about the consequences of my actions. The author of the Venice sketchbook is called Rhys Bowen. I am going to try and tell you the authors of the books as well. This book is A Tidy Ending by Joanna. I enjoyed the Audible rendition so much, I thought I'd buy the physical copy as well. This was also 50p, and I have read another Joanna Cannon book and it gave me the same sort of vibes, quite nostalgic, relatable characters. I definitely think her writing style is easily digestible and quite conversational, so it's quite well paced and it's not dense, it's very light even if the subject matter isn't. The next book is Murder at the Summer Fete by Victoria Walters. I'm going to be entirely honest with you, the cover pleased me until I read the words "a fate worse than death," then I knew I had to buy it. I love a pun. I myself have been an avid market goer as well as trader recently. I'm intrigued. I believe this is part of a trilogy. This is the second book, but I have been known to read books in and out of trilogies and whatnot and not really feel the pressure to read them in order. If something appeals to me, I will read it. I like to just pick and choose the books I would like to read. The next book I purchased was The School for Good Mothers, which very much gives me like a contemporary Handmaid's Tale vibes. Do with that what you will. It intrigued me. I am kind of interested in things that are a little bit weird, a bit spooky, kind of unique in the sense of they've not been done before or not been done before in certain time periods or different origins. I'm intrigued, bought this, and I have researched a bit more into it, and I'm kind of more and more interested in reading it because it's very mixed opinions. The author is Jessamine. The next books that I'm going to be discussing are from the Eddie Flynn con artist come detective chap. Very good books. I read 50/50 last year, which is the book between these two. Loved it. It's about two sisters accusing each other of murder. This is the book before, which I have read before that one. Wanted my own copy. It's about a serial killer who is not on trial but is in the jury. Very good book, very gripping. And this is the next book after 50/50, which I don't really know much about, but I do like Steve Cavanagh's writing. Very much makes me feel like I'm watching a thrilling crime drama on paper, in my head, just with words. Very well written, very concise, straight to the point, fast paced. Before you know it, you finish the book and you want more. And that was called The Devil's Advocate, and he's won every trial because he's behind every murder. Now, this was a little gem that I found in the charity shop because I saw it on Goodreads probably a couple of days before I went to this charity shop and thought I will get that when I next see it. It probably won't be for a couple of years because it's just recently come out on paperback. And it was there. So someone clearly must have bought it, read it, and gave it to the charity shop. And I picked it up and it was like £1.50, could not resist. Brand new book, pretty much. Spine's a bit well loved, but really intrigued. This is the book I'm actually reading at the minute. I read a good chunk last night and I want to know more. I need more information, but it's very suspicious. This book is about a boy who is supposed to be back home by a certain time. His parents look for him, see that he's in his room for his curfew, all is well, then find out that there's a girl missing and a boy missing, his cousin. Turns out his cousin was in fact the boy staying with the parents and the chap wasn't home and he's in big trouble. So The Curfew, hence the name. It's by M Logan. I've read a couple of their books. I've got a book here that I haven't read as well, The Holiday. 5 teenagers went into the woods and only 4 came out. Next book is The Book Ninja by Berg and Kalus. Not my usual sort of gripping thriller, but definitely a romantic, sweet, sentimental book. It's basically about a book lover who is trying to find her perfect man by looking for places within her favourite books or using her favourite books as like a reference. I like this. It sounds very cute, sounds very wholesome and sweet, and I am a hopeless romantic at heart. Will love this, will probably cry, and I will let you know how this goes. This is another book I read on Audible this year but really enjoyed and wanted my own copy. This is another book that I read on Audible this year that I wanted my own copy of, and it's Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Loved this book. It's such a unique concept, so well executed to the point where it's so precisely done. There's nothing missing, everything's like all wrapped up perfectly. I want more, and I know that there's more books in this series and I will definitely read those because I really enjoyed this. I was very pleased to find this for a really good deal. This wasn't in the charity shop. I did buy this online, but I think it was because it was secondhand, about £4. I have not seen it for under £7 anywhere, so £4 could not resist. It was a bit of a faff to get here, but we got it. The next book is In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. This book was recommended to me by a friend who knows I'm a hopeless romantic, and she said that it broke her, so I look forward to be broken by this book too. Quite a short book. I think I will use this as a out of my reading slump kind of book, because sometimes when I'm in the middle of a reading slump and a big book is due to be read, I need like a little filler book to palette cleanse, shall we say, and then I'm back into reading chunkier books. But I think this is going to be quite soon to be read because I'm really intrigued and I love like these sort of romancy books this sort of time of year. If you haven't guessed by my general aesthetic, I am a lover of quirky things. So The Museum of Extraordinary Things by Alice Hoffman definitely gave me the embrace your quirk vibes. I've been told it's one of those appeals to everyone kind of books. It's kind of a love story, bit of a mystery with all things wonderful thrown in there. I've heard a lot about Alice Hoffman, but I've never read one of her books. So I'm excited to read this sort of aesthetic of a book. I'm very excited to see how this book turns out. I don't know about you, but when I was younger, my go-to books were Roald Dahl and Jacqueline Wilson. And this book, The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan, gave me those vibes when I was reading the blurb. Sort of, I got a £5 book voucher from W.H. Smith's and I would like to buy a book that makes my anxious soul feel soothed. 8-year-old me needed her anxiety soothed. It gave me all of that warm nostalgia that those books kind of did for me, and it just pleased the little girl in me. And I think this will be one of those books, if I'm going through a bit of a difficult time or my pain's not great, just something to allow me to escape into. It's very easy to read, nothing too triggering or upsetting, but wholesome. I saw a few things about this book when I think it was either free on Audible or it was free on Kindle, I don't remember which, but Bookstagram went nuts for it in 2 different ways. Some people hated it, some people loved it. I would like to make my mind up, so I bought it. It's found by Erin Kinsley. It's basically about a missing person who shows up and they want to know what happened, but they won't tell them. So I'd like to know too, please. The next book isn't one I ever heard of. It is The Whispers by Heidi Perks. So when I ordered Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, I was quite surprised when this turned up instead. I emailed the rather popular secondhand bookstore and they didn't respond. I emailed again. They then responded to the first email, which was now irrelevant because the second email was more up to date. And it was a lot of miscommunication and struggle. And when I was also in the midst of a flare-up, the tiles were being done in the kitchen. I was very fragile. I just wanted my TJ Klune book to read to give me a bit of comfort, and I didn't have it. So still don't have that book. I will probably ask Santa for it for Christmas because it was so lovely. But this book, they said I could keep because of the confusion, and they then refunded me for Under the Whispering Door after so many emails. So while I feel a bit bitter that this book wasn't to be in my collection, I will take a book regardless and read it and give it a good home. And it does sound all right, but it wasn't Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which is on another level, if you ask me. The next book is another book I have recently just finished, and it's Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Garcia Marino. And wow, this book was intense. I just could not, I wanted to know more, and the more I found out, the more I didn't want to know, but now I knew and I couldn't get over it. It's like haunted house, Latina glamour. I've never read a book like it, and I will probably never read another book like it, but I needed it in my collection. It was insane for the actual narrative and the way it was presented and the whole theory and stuff behind it. It was very, very enjoyable to read. One of the best books that I've read this year so far, that I sobbed my heart out, and I definitely found my love of reading after a massive depressive episode, was ironically A Man Called Uwe, which, if you know, you know. Not the most cheerful book. The way the concept was written and how mundane it was, but in such a heartwarming and humorous way, if you can say that was humorous. This book did things to me in my own personal life, and I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read more of Frederick Backman's books because Anxious People is on my radar because I am myself an anxious person. The next book was an unexpected gem. It was an Audible daily deal and I was very much, I'll give it a go. It was £1.99. It sounds quite sweet. I love anything farm, rural things, so gave it a go. And oh my goodness, I loved it so much. I loved it far more than I ever thought I would love this book. And I immediately knew this needed to be in there, needed a physical copy because it made me feel so much brighter. I read it so quickly because I just needed something to escape to while I was working. It was definitely what needed to be prescribed for me at that particular time in my life. The next book is one that's come highly recommended to me with trigger warnings because there's elements of this book that are quite hard to read, but it's basically about a girl who is in a world that owes her nothing, yet has taken so much, and her long journey back from the edge. I've been on that edge a few times in my life, and I'd like to see it written down in a book and portrayed differently. I'm always intrigued about how people's mental health struggles are portrayed in a book. Certain books like this, like The Midnight Library, is a very good, relatable way of finding things like that being written in a book, but still a interesting enough narrative that it's not just all doom and gloom, if that makes sense. Because when you're in the edge or on the edge, it is very much doom and gloom, but also how other people may feel makes you feel less alone, makes you feel less like no one's going to understand. And I hope this book will help. I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit better, a little bit further on the recovery of therapy. I'm having my first therapy session next week, so I would like that to be something to read when I have kind of addressed my issues, just as another perspective in that sense. And the final book is a Jill Mansell book. I'm currently reading on Audible another Jill Mansell book, but Jill Mansell was a author that I kind of fell into accidentally because I think I was in Sainsbury's and one of her books was quite cheap. I was quite anxious at the time and I felt like I needed to escape. So I chose To the Moon and Back by Jill Mansell, and this one is Maybe This Time. First of all, the cover of the book, the colour, the yellow, the blue, it's like dopamine in a book cover. I love it. I like these sort of books, like I said, in reading slumps when I just need something to kind of read, to show that I've read something, but then fall back in love with reading, especially when I'm in the midst of a pain flare-up that doesn't plan on going anywhere. But that, my loves, is the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video or like me, please do subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here and join me in all of my arty and not so arty endeavours. I would like to apologise for the neglect of this channel recently. I've had a lot going on and it's been quite difficult to have the energy to do this when you're not sleeping properly and the pain is horrendous. But I did want to film something and I quite like the idea of having my channel have a bit more of me in it, not just artwork, which is a big part of my life, but also other elements that I really enjoy. And reading does provide a great deal of comfort for me in those situations when I can't work. So I'd like to thank you for your patience and for sticking with me despite me being very flaky and not being able to give as much of a schedule as I would like. But thank you so much for sticking with me. I do really appreciate it. I really hope you're all doing okay, and if you have made it this far, I'd love to know what you're currently reading or what your favourite book is at the moment. But I am now going to go. I really hope you have a truly magical rest of your day. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.